Would you allow me to be somewhat personal? I have an unusual story to tell. And to be quite honest, I delight in telling it. You see, my work brings me into contact with many people. In fact, I deal with all kinds. From the humblest country folk to the highest officials. But the event I most vividly recall happened at one of the year's peak seasons. You see, our country's leader had felt that the additional taxes were needed for us to meet our budget. So he had urged all local citizens to have their names registered at the polls so they could be duly taxed. Of course, that meant that many thousands had to make their way across the country to the city which represented their political interest. I recall the weather was still cool, although the fresh smell of spring was in the air. Grass was even good enough for limited grazing on the nearby hillsides. And the days, they were rather pleasant. But I must admit, the nights were somewhat chilly. But one night in particular stands out in my memory. It seems that the crowds were unusually large that day, and many had come by seeking lodging for the evening, as they lived too great a distance to return to their home for bedtime. Already I turned dozens away who were seeking shelter elsewhere. Exhausted, I had dozed off at the register's counter, and when I was awakened by a gentle tapping on the countertop, coming to with a start, I made out a figure of a young couple standing in the lingering shadows of the lamplight. "May I help you?" I asked, jumping up off of the stool. As the young man stood with his pretty companion, he began to speak in a low, trembling voice. "Do you have room for..." "Room?" I blurted bluntly. No, there's no room here. You should have come earlier, or at least sent a word. You'll just have to go elsewhere." Plopping back down on my stool, I was prepared to continue my nap when, much to my surprise, the young man spoke again. "But sir, you've just got to have room." Angrily, I jumped up and shouted at him, "I don't have to have anything. I've told you once, I can't take care of you. Beat it." I must get some rest. patiently and kindly, he responded, "Sir, please, please, my wife is expecting a baby right away. We've tried everywhere. All the rooms are full, and can't you give her someplace, please?" Looking closer, I noticed that the young man spoke the truth about his wife, and then I began to really feel sorry for them. I thought for a moment, and then I said, "Well, you do need a place to stay, and if you're not too choosy, I believe I can provide something for you. Come go with me." So I led them to a cobweb-covered cattle cave nearby. It wasn't the best of surroundings, I must admit, but it did offer some shelter from the cold and some privacy. Though I considered it the meekest of offerings, the man was overjoyed and just kept thanking me for my kindness. I told him, I said, you can settle up with me in the morning, and I left and went back to my stool and soon forgot all about them as I dozed off into my dreamland, lost in the midst of dreaming of castles in my peaceful slumber. I was again awakened, this time rudely, by a rather loud rapping at the door. Jumping up and hastily pacing to the door, I was greeted by 3 sheep herders. Oh, they apologized profusely for stirring me from my sleep. It was rather obvious from the start they weren't looking or interested in a room. Then they went on to explain why they had come, and the best I can recall, it was one fantastic story.